Okay, guys, good morning. It's Andrew again. Got a very special guest today. I'm very honoured to have him on. Here he is. He's coming. Okay, so Steve, you just need to join now. Send me a link. Oh, I think I can get him on. Steve, if you can just send me... There we go. Okay, Steve's coming on now. Waiting for the connection to come through. Hello,
Morning,
Steve.
Andrew. Morning.
How are you?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
Very well. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure. Delighted I've been able to master the technology.
Yeah, no, it's a challenge for me as well. Okay, listen, Steve, I just need to do a formality quickly to bookend the interview. So my name's Andrew McKenna. I'm the founder of the African Turf Academy. We're with Steve Isaac today, who's the Director for Sustainability for the RNA in St Andrews. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to kick off with a few simple questions. Trees or no trees?
Depends whether you're playing a links or a parkland, Andrew. I'm looking out my window at the first tee, 18th green of the old course. And here I would definitely say no trees.
No trees. For those of you who don't know where Steve sits, he sits beautifully overlooking the 18th green of the old course. Wonderful setting. Very envious. You probably take it for granted, though. I hope not.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay. The second question, the answer should be fairly obvious. Augusta or St Andrews?
St Andrews.
Okay.
Although in April, probably Augusta.
Augusta, yeah. Okay. And the last one for now, Jack or Tiger?
Oh, definitely Jack. I
okay.
grew up following Jack.
Okay.
I'm of that era, I'm afraid to say.
Okay. All right. So the idea of these interviews is really just to showcase for our students and the industry all the opportunities that are available in golf. The golf industry is vast, and a lot of people get blinkered at what they think it contains or the opportunities there are. So I'm delighted to have you on and showcase the would you call it the administration of golf, or how would you describe your role?
I would describe it as supporting the game.
Supporting the game.
We have an official function, a governance function along with the USGA with regards to the rules of golf. But I think for the most part, we'll be looking to support and promote the game. Certainly through our championships. And I think our main championships of the Open and the Women's Open are a great shop window for the sport.
Again, the RNA have got a beautiful saying to get more people playing more golf in more places more often. Is that right?
Yeah, which is a challenge.
It's a challenge.
Particularly at the moment.
Particularly at the moment, yeah. Impossible at the moment. Okay, how did you get into golf?
Through my father. My father was a scratch golfer, had thoughts about turning professional, probably club professional more than a touring professional. This was back in the 1950s, 1960s. Yeah. He introduced me to the sport. I took it up when we moved over to the Isle of Man. I was 10 years old when we moved from mainland England near Liverpool over to the Isle of Man in the middle of the Irish Sea, and started my golfing career on a local park pitch and putt course. It's the only place I've ever had a hole-in-one. So I have fond memories of that pitch and putt course. But then my father took me up to the course he was a member at, House Straight Golf Club, as it was known then. I think I was at the age of 13 when I got my first full set. I think I was 26 by the time I actually beat my father. He was one of those frustrating golfers. You could he was a short man, both in terms of height and distance he hit the ball. But within 100 yards of the greens, he was dynamite. You virtually knew he'd get up and down. So yeah, that's how I got into golf.
Okay, and then I believe I've never had this conversation with you, but I believe you started in greenkeeping as well, right?
Well, I've never actually been a working greenkeeper. My career started in agricultural research. For a couple of years, I was working at a place called the Weed Research Organization, which is near Oxford in England.
Okay.
And then the opportunity came up to join the Sports Turf Research Institute, based at Bingley. Hopefully a lot of your listeners know of the STRI.
Yeah.
My life has been full of good fortune, and getting the job at STRI was good fortune. I attended an interview, didn't get the job, but then someone else left and they had another position and clearly couldn't be bothered doing any more interviewing, so they offered me that post.
Okay, and then what did that job entail?
I started off on the research side, and for the first month, and this was February in Yorkshire, up in the hills, freezing cold,
chilly.
snowing quite a lot. My first few months were spent doing infiltration tests out on the trial ground, which was basically measuring the drainage rates of a lot of the trial plots.
Okay.
So I thought if I could survive that, then this could be a career.
Okay, and then the RNA started in the early 2000s, right? A lot of people think the RNA and the Royal and Ancient Golf Club of St Andrews is the same thing. They're not.
No, they're not. The Royal and Ancient Golf Club has been around since 1754, and in its time, it was responsible for the rules of golf, for the Open Championship. But in 2004, the Royal and Ancient Golf Club set up a group of companies which are what we know now as the RNA. And the RNA group of companies basically do all the business side of things, looking after the rules, looking after championships, looking after golf development, the world handicapping system. And the golf club is basically a golf club.
Mm. Okay, and that's the beautiful building you see behind the 18th green.
That's the one, yeah.
That's the one. I've had the privilege of one of your staff members taking me through that one day. But so you're in the sustainability area, and that role is to ensure or to encourage, not ensure, but encourage guys to operate their golf clubs in a sustainable way. Correct?
Yeah, it's beyond the golf course. It's the golf facility. And it's the sport itself. It cuts across championships, cuts across new developments. I suppose I got into this while I was at STRI. I had 18 very happy years there. And I was an agronomist for the vast majority of that. So the idea of encouraging people to use fewer resources was certainly the case through my career at STRI. And it's just grown at the RNA originally. Well, the RNA has been interested in sustainability and the golf course for a long time. A committee at the RNA used to support old Tom Morris when he was greenkeeping here in St Andrews.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah, more than a lifetime ago. But it was probably the 1980s, 1990s where the RNA got more serious about this, producing a couple of publications, The Way Forward, A Course for All Seasons, which talked more about the structure of golf and greenkeeping, particularly in Great Britain and Ireland and then in Europe. And it wasn't until 2002 that a golf course committee was set up at the RNA. And I became their secretary in 2003. Again, piece of good fortune. No one else seemed to want the job. And I happened to be on the doorstep working for STRI. So yeah, let's say good fortune has been with me most of my career.
Okay, and sustainability's got a very broad. It's a word used a lot in business around the world generally. What does it mean to golf? What does it mean to your department?
Well, sustainability, as you say, cuts across virtually everything we do. Everything we do that has an impact on the environment, on our business, on our communities, on society in general, could come under the umbrella of sustainability. Certainly when the Golf Course Committee started off, it was quite a limited remit in terms of looking more at the agronomy and the environmental management of the golf course. So the use of water, pesticides, that sort of thing. Our remit grew so much that in 2016, the Golf Course Committee was renamed the Sustainability Committee. And that really reflected the vast range of issues we were getting involved in. So it was everything to do with the management of the golf course. drainage, irrigation, water use, pesticide use and reducing pesticide use, other chemicals, looking after the wildlife that has a home on our golf course, but also looking at what happens in the clubhouse and other buildings, energy use, waste management. There's a whole raft of issues that we're now covering. And not only just encouraging others to cover, but certainly I feel that our credibility wouldn't have much weight if the RNA didn't actively get involved in this sort of stuff itself. So we implement sustainability policies across our championships and also within the organization now. We have a corporate responsibility policy and are implementing practices as we speak.
Yeah. Yeah, when obviously I've known you for a good few years now, and when I was managing the golf club here at Silver Lakes, I really tried to create a framework of using the sustainability angle or the agenda to help me deflect or operate properly. So I found it very useful because it actually includes financial, the local people, obviously pesticides and water and electricity and everything like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, the financial side is absolutely critical. If you're running a business that isn't financially stable, you're not sustainable. You're not going to be around much longer. The community element is an interesting one in that it relates to the impact that golf has on the local community and the benefits it can bring. Also, the potential damage it can cause. Every time I talk to an environmental NGO, there is agreement that golf can be good for the environment, not necessarily that it is. It all depends on how we manage our golf facilities. But yeah, it's the business side, it's how we relate with the community. And I think the community angle is probably underplayed because the more beneficial we're seen to the community, the more they're going to engage with the sport and with the club. And the greater the likelihood is that you're going to increase your business because of that.
Yeah, job creation, activities for the local community, can be all sorts of things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so you are in charge of the whole world outside of the US and Mexico. That's correct. Right?
I wouldn't necessarily use the word in charge of.
In charge. Okay, you support.
But yeah, our jurisdiction covers the entire world of golf outside of the USA and Mexico.
Okay.
We have about 145 affiliates who are the national governing bodies of the game. And they're the people that we mainly work through. Though obviously you're aware that we do work with other organizations like the African Turf Academy.
Okay, so how do you, I mean, that sort of answers the question, but how do you manage to, I know you've got a small team, you don't have a huge staff count or head count. So how do you manage to get to the whole world?
Well, there are three of us. And I believe you're going to be interviewing one of my colleagues, Wendy Cole, next week. Yes. I look forward to tuning into that one.
I'm going to talk to her about the scholarship program, so we'll keep that bit for her.
Yeah. But in terms of getting in touch with the world, we have a massive network. I mean, obviously we have contacts with all of our affiliates around the world, but we also have contacts with a lot of the greenkeeper associations, club manager associations. Just a massive network. Research organizations, education establishments like your academy, NGOs, people outside of golf, governments that we work with. So it's a major network. And certainly that's been one of our big tasks through this lockdown, has been keeping up with that network, making sure that they know we're still here and that we're thinking about them. And that we want to make sure that we're prepared to get back up and running as soon as we can when restrictions are lifted.
Yeah, it's very important to stay visible in these times. It's the idea of these interviews is just to keep visible, keep the industry engaged, and do our little bit.
Yeah, I mean, to our eternal miscredit, keeping in touch with that global audience has involved a lot of travel over the last 16 years. I think this lockdown has made us appreciate far more the value of remote meetings,
Yep.
which has reduced our travel significantly, and we can't travel at the moment, obviously. But I think when we come out of this, we'll still be looking to travel a bit, but we'll think probably a bit longer and harder. Is it actually necessary to do that traveling? Both to reduce our carbon footprint from a sustainability point of view, but also from our own health. I don't think when you tell people where you've been and the people you've met and the great times you've had, they think that traveling's fantastic. And to a great degree, it is. But it gets very tiring after a while. And it's nice to spend a bit of time at home.
Yeah, as long as Wendy keeps coming down to our conferences,
don't worry about that.
You can cancel the other ones. Okay, right. Let's talk about the Open because obviously it's and I think I'm okay to say that your only income, the RNA's only income, comes from the Open Championship. I'm okay to say that, Stephen.
It's not our only income, but it's by far our major income.
Okay, and this year it's been cancelled for obvious reasons. And how is that going to affect your operation, your department, the RNA as a whole?
Well, we've been asked as departments to review our budgets and to only look to support projects, activities that we already actively committed to. So I've gone through that process. I think we've lost something like 40% of our budget for the year. But you'll be pleased to hear the money for the African Turf Academy is safe. Hopefully we'll return more to a normal budget level for next year, but who's to say? So yeah, it has had a significant impact. And part of the reason for doing that is to build up, you might think of it as a war chest, to help support golf as we come out of this COVID-19 pandemic. Having said that, I don't want everyone to go away thinking that they're going to receive major contributions from the RNA to help them get back on their feet. You know, the money that we have, and I think we have about £10 million a year to spend on golf development activities, and probably 10% of that on sustainability, doesn't actually stretch very far when you take it across 145 countries.
No, sure, absolutely. Okay, so when you're at the Open, let's imagine it's going ahead in due course. you are proactive with your sustainability at the Open. Last year, you
very much so.
had a guy. You implemented. Let me get the words right. You implemented the drinking canisters so that there was less plastic. The players got their own logo drinking canister, and the guests and the spectators had their aluminium canister to refill, etc. What else do you do? What do you do at events that promote the sustainability?
Yeah, since 2015, we've had our own sustainable development program for the Open called Green Links. But even before that, we were operating in a relatively sustainable way. In terms of the golf course, when I was at STRI, I used to do agronomy work at open venues for the RNA. And we have used STRI for many years for that purpose. Before we took on 3 agronomists onto our own staff at the start of 2019. So we have our own in-house capability there. And that obviously looks at the sustainability of the golf course in terms of the resources it uses and how the courses are maintained. Also in terms of the environment, the habitat management, the wildlife protection when you're erecting stands and spectator walkways for 200,000 people through a week. And we use Bob Taylor at STRI for the ecology service. So the golf course has been part of that sustainability equation for a long time. But since 2015, we've looked more closely at the staging activities around the Open. You touched on the water provision for spectators and players. And yes, we managed to remove, I think it was over 140,000 single-use plastic bottles of water from the Open last year through that initiative. which was very well received, and we'd certainly be looking to carry that through and implement something similar across our other championships. But we've also looked at issues like waste management. We have waste segregation at the Open, and then working with our waste contractor, we ensure that as much as possible can be recycled. And since 2015, every Open Championship has achieved zero waste to landfill. Now, a proportion of that has gone to incineration, conversion to energy, which some argue isn't the best way to deal with waste. But we're very restricted as to the technology that's available to us wherever the Open is held. We like to deal with the waste as locally as possible, which obviously cuts back on haulage costs and carbon emissions. And the other aspect which controls us is in energy provision. And energy is probably our biggest challenge. You've been to the Open Championship. It's like a small village. And you can imagine if we plugged the Open Championship into the main supply, then the lights in local towns would probably go out. The Open uses a lot of energy. At the moment, most of the energy is supplied through diesel generators, and that's one of our big tasks, to reduce the number of diesel generators, to bring in renewable, cleaner energies, so that we can reduce our overall carbon footprint. Catering is a good one. In terms of catering, we tend to try and use as many local businesses as we can, local produce, which is a great way of, again, community, supporting local businesses, supporting the local community. But again, it reduces the carbon footprint. If you're reducing your haulage costs from far afield, then that's a very positive thing to do. There are other things that we do. Community engagement. We always get a lot of volunteers working at the Open Championship. I think our staff increases from something like 250 to over 4,000 at an Open Championship, and a lot of those are local volunteers. So they get involved in the Open. They're very welcome.
Is that what do they do? Marshalling and greenkeeping?
They do marshalling. We have support from Bigger. They usually bring about 60 greenkeepers. But also just having people as ambassadors for the Open. To tell spectators where various facilities are, where the nearest train station is, whatever. So that's an important part of the Open family, if you like. And without volunteers, the Open wouldn't happen. The other aspect to sustainability and to our Open sustainability program is legacy. What do you leave behind? And we're very aware, excuse me, that the Open is quite a disruptive event for the people whose community you take it to. Roads are closed. There's a lot more traffic, a lot more people about. You might get local businesses being used more, but there is a lot of disruption. So since 2015, we've operated a legacy fund. So the RNA has put money into this fund, and at the moment it stands at £100,000 a year. So at Royal Portrush, local projects, sustainability projects, not just environmental ones, but community ones, were funded. The same has happened at Royal St. George's. We've agreed sustainability projects, legacy fund projects, and they'll be enacted from next year now.
Okay. All right. And my next question was going to be, going on from where the funding side, is you obviously get approached to go away from the Open for a minute, so you get approached by lots of people to receive the funding. How do you go about deciding who to support, who not to support? I mean, that must be a weigh on your mind a lot, and tough decisions. How do you go about deciding that?
We up until this year, we've basically worked on a process of receiving applications for support, generally insisting that they have support from one or more of our affiliates. So that's been a filtering mechanism. Since this year, well, in 2018, we launched an initiative called Golf Course 2030. I think you're familiar with that, which is looking to develop research, education, communication programs to try and mitigate the impact of climate change, resource constraints and regulation on the condition of our golf courses and their playability. Now, that is being driven by Golf Course 2030 documents that are being produced at national or regional level. And at the moment, we have Golf Course 2030 documents which look at the issues that are going to be faced, prioritizes those in terms of what needs to be researched. And that is helping us to refine who and what we fund, because essentially you have to have a Golf Course 2030 document to apply for funding. So if at the moment you're in Great Britain and Ireland, Scandinavia, or Spain, or Singapore, and Singapore is an interesting one because that's where we have an office based, the RNA has an office out there, you can apply for Golf Course 2030 funding. We're looking to broaden that by getting more countries to develop national documents, and I'm expecting 4 or 5 more this year. Now, that doesn't mean that what we fund isn't of value anywhere else in the world. We currently have 14 Golf Course 2030 projects on the go, and they vary from water management issues, both drainage and irrigation, through integrated pest management, trying to find sustainable options for the control of diseases, pests and weeds, all the way through to coastal change and greenkeepers, greenkeeper profiles and greenkeeper education. And I would suggest that the vast majority of the projects we're already funding are applicable for most of the world. And that, again, is going to be part of the Golf Course 2030 process. Over the years, certainly research into turfgrass management outside of the USA has been very limited and very fragmented. And you've tended to find that if a piece of research has been done in one country, it's probably been done in 3 or 4 different countries, the same piece of work, which to my mind can be a waste of resources, both in terms of people's time and expertise, but also funding. So hopefully through Golf Course 2030, we'll be able to coordinate research better, and we'll be able to fund cross-border projects, probably starting in continental Europe. But I think you'd find that a lot of the research projects that you can have a look at the RNA website are applicable to your situation in South Africa.
Yeah, I know from our side, I wrote you a mail in early 2012, and then I came up to see you at the end of 2012, and I think it was the end of 2013 where I think you had a look through what I'd started down here, and after probably 18 months of discussion, you gave me a call and said, I've got good news for you, we can start supporting you, which was a massive help to get African Turf Academy off the ground. And some of the success stories we've had have been directly, indirectly related to the RNA's support. So,
well, I'll leave it to Wendy next week to tell you how we choose who we support for our academic programs.
I know one of our ex-students who just left last year is now joined Fancourt and is following up in his studies with Wendy. I think Wendy's just taken him on recently. Okay,
I know we're very proud of our scholars. We've got some great guys out there.
Yeah, one of them's watching. Neville Venold is watching.
Neville.
And Wendy's also watching, so
Good.
You guys can give each other a wave. Normally at this time, I ask the audience if they've got any questions. So if you guys have got any questions for Steve, I think they're listening more than asking today. I'm going to go back to a couple of, just to break the ice a little bit, I'm going to go back to a couple of my simple questions. If you're going to play in the wind and no rain, or rain and no wind, what are you going to play in? You normally play in both, right?
In the wind, I think, because it's part of links golf, and it really makes you think about your shots. So I don't like the wet. I'm afraid I've grown into a fair weather golfer.
Okay.
And a bit of wind I can cope with.
Bit of wind. Okay, and then rugby or football?
Football. And that goes back again to my father. He was an Everton supporter. I'm an Everton supporter. And the first match he took me to at Goodison Park was when we beat West Bromwich Albion 2-0 in 1970 to win the championship. So,
Wow.
Hats has to be football.
Football. Okay. And the last one, another obvious question for you: to play golf by the sea or in the countryside?
It doesn't matter. It's great fun playing golf wherever. And I've been fortunate enough to play golf all over the world. I've never been a good golfer, so I just play it for fun. And it's fun all over the place. A flexible 12.
Flexible 12. Okay. All right. Neville's fired a question at you. He says, "Hi, Steve. Hope you're well. With this year's Open being cancelled, will the 2020 Open be hosted by Royal St George's or St Andrews? And will the 2020 be the 149th or 150th?" I know the answer to that, but I'll let you answer.
Well, the 2020 Open will now be the 2021 Open, and it will be hosted at Royal St George's, and it will be the 149th. So the 150th will still be a St Andrews Open, and that will be played in 2022. Thanks for the question, Neville.
Yeah, good.
Nice,
good
easy
question.
one.
nice, easy one. Okay. Right. So going back to some basic questions here. What do you think makes a great greenkeeper?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
Maybe it's not an easy question. Maybe it's a tough one.
I think there's a difference between a greenkeeper and course manager, obviously. A great greenkeeper, I think, has to have a lot of feel for the subject. They have to understand nature and how nature works and how their turf responds to that. They have to have a love for nature. They certainly have to have some underpinning knowledge. A lot of the time when you see a problem on the golf course, if you're not familiar with it and you're not familiar how to deal with it, just going back to those basic principles can help you work out what's best to do. So I think there are lots of skills required by a greenkeeper. Once you start working up through the ranks and you start taking on more managerial responsibilities, then obviously you need to expand your skill set. And one of the great disappointments for me, I mean, I've been in this world of golf since 1985. Is that in 1985, when I went to greenkeeper conferences, one of the questions that was being thrown about was always, why aren't greenkeepers treated with the respect their professionalism deserves? That still happens today. And we need to find a way of getting over that. And I'm hopeful that one of the Golf Course 2030 projects might produce a pathway to increase the recognition for greenkeepers and their immense skill set. I can't think of many other jobs that requires the sort of skill set that is needed in the greenkeeping world.
Yeah, it's a hugely undervalued part of the golf club. I mean, it's astonishing that some people don't appreciate what they do. They're running in South Africa, they've got 24, 23, 20 members of staff running a huge budget, got to manage the people, manage the money, manage the machinery, manage the fertilizers, and then negotiate their way through the club structures and politics and all that stuff. So it's a fascinating job.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, who's responsible for the biggest asset at the golf club? It's the golf course and it's the greenkeepers. So you're looking at £1 million, $1 million asset before you think about things like the irrigation system. Before you think about all of the machinery that's in the machinery sheds. I don't know about South Africa, but here in the UK, a lot of people who are undervalued, their value is being seen at the moment. Obviously, the health workers, social workers, and the like, now being referred to as heroes. And let's hope that's reflected once we get out of this in them being better rewarded for what they do. And I think the same would apply to greenkeepers in many respects. At the moment and in every day, they are the undersung heroes of golf.
Yeah, and you touched on it a minute ago. In the industry, it gets confusing for a lot of people. There's course superintendent, course manager, greenkeeper. In my mind, it's the same. Some of them prefer to be called one or the other. What do you see the difference in? Is there a difference in those names and those titles?
I think there is a difference, and I think it's a managerial one. It's responsibilities that you take as you work up that ladder. But again, that's one conversation we're having as part of this Golf Course 2030 project. Should we be calling the people who look after our golf courses something different? They were keepers of the green back in old Tom Morris's day. Things have moved on. There are a lot of technical aspects to greenkeeping now that weren't around 100 plus years ago. So maybe we need to revise the terminology. It's amazing. I had a conversation with Dr. Paul Miller from SRUC, who you know, and we talked about this. And one occupation struck me as being relevant in this terminology is people working in laboratories. And when you talk about a laboratory assistant, you think of someone who has a fairly basic function in a laboratory. When you talk about a laboratory technician, you think of something very different. Someone who has technical skills and much more responsibility in the role. And it's amazing what a job title can infer to people outside of the profession. I think that's something that we need to look at.
Yeah, greenkeeping to me is not a fair title for someone in the role. Obviously, there's the levels, but they do so much more than that. So course manager is probably my title of choice if I'm going to put my neck out there. Superintendent's a bit American for me.
Yeah, I mean, certainly superintendent you find in America, you find in places like Australia. Course manager is what we use in the UK. Over in France, they call them directors, and they call greenkeepers gardeners.
Okay, so quite a distinct difference.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, during the lockdown, how have you had to adjust your approach to everything? What have you done, and what things do you think you're going to take forward, and do you think it's ever going to go back to where it was?
I think everyone keeps talking about a new normal, and I think there will be a new normal. I don't think we'll live our lives the way we have done, certainly in the recent past. Although when you look back at the history of disasters, people's lives change for a few years, and then you get back into the old way of doing things. This might be a little bit different. Certainly from the lockdown, we're all working from home. And I wouldn't say it's had a massive impact in our day-to-day work, thanks to modern communications. We've used technology to do a lot of remote meetings. In fact, we're probably talking to people more now than we ever have done.
I've never sat and had a chat with you like this before. I've been to your office a few times, but
it's quite nice. I need to do more of this, Andrew. I think what has changed.
Oh yeah, I lost you.
We're
there.
not meeting people face to face. So we're not traveling anything like as much as we used to, for obvious reasons. And we're not meeting people face to face. But I would say that because our network is so well developed, and we've been working with people for a long time, and in sustainability, there aren't many of our affiliates who are particularly active. Probably at most maybe 20. So we work very closely with them. I don't think we're missing that face-to-face contact at the moment. It's great going to conferences, and we're able to meet a wider audience, and that's what we're missing. But we're almost coming out of conference season anyway. I mean, for us, I suppose October to end of March is when we do most of our conferences. So that's the major thing that's changed. We've got lots of work to be getting on with.
Yeah.
We've had more work piling on because of the COVID pandemic, discussing how golf clubs, the game of golf, is going to get through this and what the RNA can do to support the game through this. What we do as an organisation, obviously the championships are the big things that have had a hit this year. So certainly our championship department is extremely busy looking to how it restructures, and I'm sure that people from other departments will be moved to help them in that process as the months go by. But I wouldn't say it's had a major impact on the sustainability department. We used to have a morning cup of tea every morning. I still have my morning cup of tea. But we meet twice a week remotely, keep up with each other and with other colleagues. So at the moment, not having a major impact.
Yeah, this little exercise I've been doing has been amazing for me because I've had a chance to chat to the guys in the industry from all over the world that I've got to know over the years. But I'm chatting to them in a different way than you would do face to face. It's like it almost allows you to be more free in what you're talking about with some people to listen in. So it's been great for me. Tina's Keller, who's a friend of mine who works at St. Francis Links in Southern Cape of South Africa. He's asking, is there any indication of the percentage of golf course closures around the world? Do we have too many golf clubs? He says you don't have to answer it if you feel it's unfair.
Right. Certainly over the last 10 years, the way people have played golf has changed dramatically. In a lot of mature countries, clubs with memberships have struggled to retain members. A lot of people are now what we would term nomadic golfers. They tend not to be a member at one club. They like to play a lot of different courses. Doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't as many people playing the game as there were. I think generally speaking, there probably are. Some clubs have struggled, and certainly a number of clubs across the UK have closed over the last 5 years. A lot of them, the clubs that sprung up through the 90s, farmers diversifying their land use, and because of the land that was available, obviously in fairly remote locations. And I think they've struggled to get golfers to come and visit them. But it's been a relatively small number. We haven't lost hundreds and hundreds of golf clubs. Have we got more clubs than we need? I think it's a case of supply and demand, isn't it? And yes, I'm pretty sure that we have more of certain types of golf clubs that we need, and those are the ones that are under financial pressure. And it often surprises me why some clubs don't look at their model, their business model, and look to see if there's a better way of operating their business. We're involved with the French Golf Federation. They do a lot of work with the government and in sustainability. And you may be aware of their 100 short courses project that was set up around the Ryder Cup as part of the Ryder Cup legacy. And as part of that, they got government funding. They got local authorities to provide land free of charge or at a low rent. And over a 4-year period, over 100 par 3 courses, pitch and putt courses, driving ranges have been constructed in France. And 99% of them are successful businesses.
Wow.
And this is a country that really has never taken golf on as much as others. It's always been a relatively new sport to the French. But a lot of French people are coming to golf because of the facilities that are available to them. They're all local. They're all in urban areas. It's a short form of golf. It doesn't take too long. Families are very welcome. And I do wonder if some of our 18-hole courses around the world that are struggling shouldn't look to models like that to say, look, there are people out there who want to get engaged with golf. A lot do not want to turn up on the doorstep of the local 18-hole members club. Let's give them an alternative.
Yeah, absolutely. The golf can be quite intimidating if you haven't been in it all your life.
Golf can be quite intimidating if you've been in it most of your life,
yeah,
Andrew.
If you've been, absolutely. Nicky Curtain, you know Nicky? He's our head greenkeeper at Silver Lakes.
Oh, right, yes, I've met Nicky, yes.
You've met Nicky. He's asking you, he said he's missed the first part of the interview, but what is the biggest African country the RNA are investing for sustainability?
It will be South Africa, and that will be through the African Turf Academy. I think until we get a Golf Course 2030 South Africa, we won't be looking to direct investment in research programs, but certainly the education side, it will be South Africa. We tend to find that there are some countries who generally don't come to us that often for support, and it tends to be countries like South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, maybe Canada, where the game is well established, and where it's generally pretty well funded internally. In terms of golf development, again, South Africa will probably be the country where we've provided most funding to support championships and to support education. I think one of the universities in South Africa has received golf development funding for students on their golf programs. So definitely South Africa.
Yeah, that's the University of Pretoria, I believe. I was at Maseru Golf Club recently with Howard Swan, who's listening. He's on here, and we saw a sign on the by one of the greens of a tournament that the RNA had supported a couple of years ago.
Right.
So there was an inter-country ladies tournament, I believe. Is that right, Howard? He's listening. Okay, let's move on. But for our youngsters, our students, what do you think someone needs to do to get into the golf industry? What would you say? What advice would you give them entering the golf industry? From an African turf perspective, any advice?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think the important thing is that you have a passion for the sport. Maybe if you know someone who plays golf, who's a member of a golf club, if you're not that directly involved, then approach the club through them. But it's not only golf clubs. And as you said at the start of the interview, I mean, golf covers a very wide spectrum of potential opportunities for getting involved in sport. So there's the club angle, both the club management, greenkeeping, playing the game, but there's also the trade element to it. And it may be that you have the passion for selling things. So that might be an opportunity. There's the research side. And if that's your bag, there are plenty of universities and other research establishments that you might be able to approach. Education. Again, there are educational opportunities, but also educational establishments who might be interested in taking people on who have a passion for the sport. I think the important thing is to build up your network, build up the number of people you know. The more people you know, the more opportunities are going to come your way. And don't be afraid to put yourself forward.
Absolutely. Great advice. I mean, that goes back to the idea of these interviews, to show the students, to show the industry the magnitude of it. It's
not just the magnitude. I think it's the welcoming approach of the industry. As I said, I've been working a long time in this industry, and I think over that time there are probably only two people I'd be quite happy not to meet again. And I have to say, you're not one of those.
Am I not one? Okay.
And I think it's a very friendly, it's a very welcoming industry. So I think the door is open. The important thing is to get out there and take your opportunities.
I don't know if you had the chance to listen in yesterday, but Jeff Claus, who's a very well-known club manager down here, director of golf, club manager, but he gets his staff to do everything. He runs St Francis Links Golf Club, and he gets his staff to engage in all the areas. So his greenkeeper sometimes helps out in the food and beverage, and Tina's is sometimes mowing the fairways and so on. So I mean, I love that. His management style is very wonderful. Wonderful.
I think that's brilliant. I mean, how can you recognise people's skills if they're limited to what they do? So I think that's a fantastic thing to be doing.
Yeah, and one of his success stories is Craig Haldane. So Craig went to see him, I think, I don't know, many years ago, but Jeff said to Craig, I want you to try everything and get out on the golf course, get into the food and beverage, and that's where Craig got his passion from.
I'd have to say, I'm not sure I'd want to be the first person to have a meal cooked by a greenkeeper, but you never know.
No, I don't think he was a greenkeeper at the time. Apparently he's quite good on the piano, so he was playing the piano as well. Okay, so just finally, it's been great and wonderful answers. The mentor side of a career. Jeff, we spoke about it over the last 16 days. I've been chatting to people, but how important do you think it is to find a good mentor in your career?
I think it's important to find people that you admire and respect. I'm not sure about mentors as such, or certainly not lifelong mentors. I think it's probably more important to work along the principle of surrounding yourself with good people. Yeah. Now, they could be mentors, they could be colleagues. And I've been very fortunate throughout my career. I've been surrounded by very, very good people. And that started at STRI. It certainly started when I was working as an agronomist visiting golf clubs. I hate to think what the first greenkeepers I encountered thought of my skills as an agronomist. You very quickly learnt not to say so many stupid things. So I think surrounding yourself with good people is absolutely key to making progress in this life, be that in your career or in your personal life.
Absolutely. Wendy's asking if you include her in that.
No comment.
I've been meaning to chip in, but we've been talking to SDRI. I met them at Harrogate in January, and we've been talking to SDRI about bringing them in to be involved with the ATA, African Turf Academy, at some point. We haven't managed to get over the line because as soon as we started the chats, this pandemic kicked in, so we haven't got it. But hopefully in due course we'll get SDRI involved somehow. And Nikki's asking another question. What's your feeling on foot golf? Possible option for golf clubs to look at into the future?
I'm not convinced. I think the opportunity there is a very limited one, and probably you're best focusing on what you do best. There are plenty of other things you can do in a golf club, and that's certainly one of the sustainability angles. I don't know if you're familiar with the Scandinavian Turf Grass and Environmental Research Foundation.
Yeah, I've seen them.
They're very into multi-functionality in golf clubs. And again, we were talking earlier about the business model of golf clubs. And if you're struggling with the golf, you need to look at other angles, diversification. Full golf might be one of those things. But I, as a football fan, as a golf fan, I'm not overly keen at mixing the two.
And I think just to give my estate a bit of a punt here, I think Silver Lakes really do an amazing job at what you're describing there. We've got kiddies play areas around the club. We've got a good family restaurant. We've got tennis courts. We've got and also where my parents live in the UK, Royal Norwich. I've been to visit them recently when I was in England, and Peter Todd is they're developing something really special there, which is again inclusive. It's a big development. But
golf courses are big facilities. There are lots of things you can do with the land and the buildings at a golf club, and again, this comes back to the community angle. There are lots of educational things you can do at golf clubs. You talked about the general manager who's getting his staff to do all of the jobs across the golf course. Just think about the kids in your local community.
Yeah.
You could get them involved in greenkeeping or food and beverage or in the pro shop, whatever. There's lots of skills there that we can help support the local community with.
Absolutely. All right, Steve. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.
It's been really informative. I've loved it. Is there any way people can get hold of you? I normally offer this out, but you can.
Absolutely. More than delighted to hear from anyone. You can contact me through my email address, which is steveisaac@randa.org, or through the RNA website. We have an information contact us page. More than delighted to hear from anyone, and we'll try and answer any questions that come our way.
Fantastic. And Wendy, I'm going to ask you more about the whole scholarship program next week. So we'll hear more, even more about what you guys do in your great department in lovely St Andrews up there.
A final comment: I would include Wendy in that list of good people.
Yeah, no, she definitely is in that list.
I have to keep on her good side.
Yeah. All right, Steve. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Andrew.
I'll be in touch in a minute.
Okay. Cheers.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, that was wonderful for me. Steve has been a great supporter of the African Turf Academy since its inception in the early 2010s, and it's a partnership that we cherish a lot, and the opportunities that the students have got from it. So wonderful to have him, and I look forward to chatting to you, Wendy, next week. Cheers, guys. Bye.